Has the EU gotten it right when it comes to one of the bloc's most divisive issues, the migration policy, and how it will play out at the next EU Parliament elections in June? This is what we discuss with the European Commission Vice President Margaritis Schinas in the Global Conversation. Vice President, thank you so much for being here. And let's start with one of the most burning issues when it comes to the EU policies, which is migration. Now, when you became the Commission in 2019, that had already been quite an important and massive issue. Now, ever since, the crisis has got into a different dimension with more conflicts and with the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. How do you see the current EU migration policies, also given the recent agreement signed with Egypt and Tunisia? Do you think we're going to see more of the agreements of this kind?
In the current political cycle on migration, we had to work at the same time as firefighters and architects. Firefighters in dealing with the many crises, both at our external border, but also within the Union, running from crisis to crisis, from incident to incident, ship to ship. And I would dare say, in most of the cases, successfully managing the many migration emergencies. Next to that, we, for the first time after decades of failure, we managed to produce a major European agreement on a new EU Pact for Migration and Asylum. Since the 20th of December last year, Europe at last has a comprehensive, holistic migration policy that starts at our borders, rather starts at countries of origin and transit, I'll come to Egypt in a second, then on a more federalized control of our external border, and finally on solidarity. On the external dimension of migration policy, we have invested lots of time, of efforts, and many of my colleagues from the President down, President Michel also was very helpful in that. We tried to establish partnerships with the 25 countries of origin and transit that mattered to us on migration. We will never be able to cope internally unless we're able to cope externally. And I think that now with a landmark agreement with Egypt, which follows in the line of our earlier statement with Turkey, following the agreement with Tunisia, now we have a web of partnership agreements with major migration partners that will undoubtedly help us to improve the situation in managing migration flows in a cooperative way.
Now let's talk a little more about the elections. Migration, of course, has always been one of the most divisive issues for the national politics and for the European politics. We have seen over the past years that across Europe, the governments are shifting right. Are you worried about the possible swing from centre to right as the result of the EU elections in June?
First of all, I think that we have to be collectively proud for the European Union because we're a union of democracies. Elections are a good thing for us. This is why people envy us. This is why we're so admired in the world, because we have elections, free, open elections, and the European election is the second most numerous electoral process on the planet after the Indian elections. So, no, I'm not particularly worried. I think that what matters is for Europeans to go to vote and attribute praise or blame on what works and what doesn't. I don't think that we have to jump into a conclusion that this will be a triumph of the extremes or the extreme right that would paralyze everything. Okay, 24% of the Dutch people voted for Geert Wilders, but 76% did not. And he will not be the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. And if you look at Poland, it was not the populist right that won. It was Donald Tusk and his moderate allies. If you look at Rome, I don't see Giorgia Meloni as a catalyst for the extreme Putinophiles. I see her as a barrage to the extreme right and the friends of Putin. So let's wait a bit. let's not jump into a conclusion. We still have 2 months. Let's see what happens.
Well, the whole 2 months indeed. But do you consider your political group having an alliance with the far right? And where would be this red line that your political group would not cross when it comes to making possible alliances?
Well, I'm here in my quality as Vice President of the European Commission. I'm not after Manfred Weber's job, but I can offer my personal view of how things are developing. I think the EPP would be at the heart of a broad coalition of moderate pro-European forces, as it has always been the case so far. I do not see the EPP of Kyriakos Mitsotakis, for example, joining any extreme right allies. This will not happen. Kyriakos and Jean-Claude Juncker are the ones who wanted Orban out of the EPP, I may remind you. So I see the EPP central at the heart of the new web of political alliances in the European Parliament. I see that on certain subjects we can work as we did for the Migration Pact with a large chunk of the ECR. Giorgia Meloni and the Italian MEPs of Fratelli d'Italia backed overwhelmingly, together with the Liberals, the centre-right and the Socialists, our pact. So that's how I see the centre of gravity in the new Parliament.
Vice President, and finally, briefly, do you consider doing more now in terms of motivating the young Europeans to come to the polls and vote in June, specifically those for whom that's going to be the very first election?
Absolutely. I mean, look what happened during the Brexit referendum. We had so many inspiring pro-European figures admired in the UK, but the yes vote failed to mobilize them. And it was a mistake that we paid dearly. Let's not do the same mistake in the European elections. There are so many leaders out there in sports, in culture, in arts, in philosophy, creative industries. We are the envy of the world when it comes to football. In all areas we excel. And most of these people are committed Europeans. They work across borders, they make their reputation across borders. What's wrong with having these people talk to young Europeans and tell them, go to vote? That's, I think, something that governments should also embrace. I'm doing it from Brussels. I don't think that commissioners are the right people to talk to young people to tell them go to vote. Probably it will create the opposite effect. But I take the opportunity of the launch of the new Euronews now to make this appeal to those who lead by example, to the role models. These are the people whom we need.